Hey, welcome to Germ Tesla. In this video, I thought it was a good idea to talk about the price comparison of Tesla versus all other cars that are similar to it. And so what I did for this video is I looked at AutoTrader in 100 miles from my location, which is Columbia, South Carolina, at certain search criteria that were similar to the Tesla Model 3, both long-range all-wheel drive and the rear-wheel drive standard range variant, as well as a comparison of the Model Y all-wheel drive long-range. First off, let's talk about how I did this search. So the search was done 100 miles around Columbia, South Carolina, and for the Model Y, what I did is I searched specifically for new vehicles that both have leather seats and that are four-wheel drive or all-wheel drive variants. And then I basically went through all of the different makes and models in those areas that are for sale brand new. Now I looked at both the lowest cost version of certain ones, and when I was going through the SUVs, I actually looked at as the different specs would increase in cost. And so what we're looking at right now is a chart of exactly the SUVs, and I've got a couple of lines on this chart. So this is just in no particular order. It's mostly kept by manufacturers grouped together. And what you'll notice here is that at each manufacturing group, it scales from a low price up to a high price. And what that is, that's just different models that those manufacturers has and how they increase in value. And then I've got on the very far right the Tesla Model Y, and it's the all-wheel drive variant. So the first line you're going to see here is the cyan line, which goes to the top of the chart. That is the cost of the Model Y right out of the gate, sticker price if you bought it online today. And so that price is roughly $50,490. It's what the all-wheel drive Model Y. I did not do a standard range Model Y in this comparison. Also what I have there is a green line, and that's the average of all these cars. So as you can see, the Model Y is slightly over the average of all of these cars. Doesn't necessarily mean it's above average for an SUV, because you got to remember there's a lot of SUVs that are actually not four-wheel drive that would bring that average down. One thing that we want to talk about in this, you'll see that the Model Y is very comparable to a lot of vehicles. And I got another chart that I'm going to show in just a second, but one thing I wanted to point out here was the Model Y is eligible for $7,500 in a tax credit. Federal. So that's across the entire country if you meet a couple of requirements, which most people do meet those requirements. So that right there brings the price down a lot. That brings it down to almost $43,000 for the all-wheel drive, which is the mid-variant Model Y. It's the middle specification Model Y. And what you'll notice once we do that, I mean, we're in the price ranges of Ford Edges and all kinds of things. So this next chart here that we're going to show is exactly that. It's showing a ramp up where you got the lowest price on the right side of the graph and the highest price on the left side of the graph. Alright, so you have the Model Y at its standard price, about 3/4 of the way up that graph, right? So it's priced about 3/4 of the way. These are all vehicles that have leather seats and are four-wheel drive or all-wheel drive. So right away you can see a lot of vehicles that the Model Y is more expensive than. But all of these other vehicles, they are internal combustion vehicles. So that means a couple of things. The price of ownership is a lot more expensive for any of these other vehicles. With an electric vehicle, you're not going to have to pay hardly anything in any kind of maintenance. No oil changes. Brakes are very long term, spread out. There's really not a lot of maintenance or cost. And then the fuel cost is a lot cheaper because it's electric. And electric is much lower cost than gasoline, as well as it's more of a constant price, so it's easier to budget for, really, based on your driving and how much you use, because it's not going to vary based on what gas station you go to or the prices of fuel at the time. So right there, the price of this car really, if you think of it owning it 5 years out, comes out to be a lot cheaper than a lot of these cars. It actually gets down closer to, say, 1/3 of the price of all of these cars. So now the Model Y is starting to turn into a real bargain, not to mention all the other technical capabilities that the Model Y has over all these other cars. As far as that goes, you can make that argument for pretty much any EV. Then you add in the $7,500, which is the next to the right cyan line, where it's showing it just above the Ford Edge, the Mazda CX-5 Signature, just under the Jeep Cherokee. So it's cheaper than a lot of cars, cheaper than the Honda Passport, the Nissan Pathfinder. There's some really popular cars. The Toyota 4Runner, the full regular price is more cheap than. So right here shows you that the Model Y is a very competitive car price-wise to any SUV out there if you're looking to have something that's semi-luxury, leather seats, heated seats, four-wheel drive, full panoramic glass, big display with a lot of tech. The Model Y has more tech than any of these other cars put together. I mean, and that just is what it is. The next thing that I went ahead and did is I actually looked at the Model 3s, which for this search, what I searched for was had to be a four-door sedan, and the vehicles needed to have leather seats and heated seats. That was my criteria. There was no all-wheel drive or rear-wheel drive. That could be any of them. So, and then what I did in this search is, with those criteria, leather seats, heated seats, sedan that's four doors, I went to the lowest price car, and all I actually put on the list this time was the cheapest of each model. So when I say that, I mean there may be a model in here. We'll just take the Volvo B90 for example, or actually let's do the Nissan Century, which is the cheapest car on this list. Is the Nissan Century. It's coming in around $23,000. But if you actually go look, that car can range anywhere from $23,000 all the way up to almost $30,000. Some of these cars have a price increase of $15,000 after you've done all your add-ons and everything. So what this chart's showing us is two Teslas in comparison. We've got a Model 3 rear-wheel drive, and then we've got a Tesla Model 3 all-wheel drive. And so the prices of those are different. So the long-range Model 3 comes in at about $47,240. The rear-wheel drive comes in right at $40,240. So almost sub $40,000 vehicle for the rear-wheel drive Model 3. Both of these cars get excellent range. There'd be no range anxiety, so the cars are really good, to be honest with you, for both of these. The all-wheel drive does have a little better acceleration. It's got all-wheel drive, so it just handles a little bit better, but you know, that's the case for any all-wheel drive car typically on the market. And then I've got a line in there where you subtract that $7,500 tax credit to show you kind of where they come out compared to everything else. Now what we've got here is these cars are not necessarily in any order, but they are grouped by manufacturer. It's kind of a busy chart. What you can see here is that the Model 3 rear-wheel drive sub $7,500 is almost the same price as a lot of your really cheap cars, right? It's almost one of the cheapest cars on the list for this. And then again, you tack on you know, the price of fuel and the lack of maintenance, where you don't have to worry about maintaining that car for the most part every year. You come out where it actually comes out really cheap. It's probably going to come out to the price of the lowest price car on this list, which is the Nissan Century, which has no bells or whistles. It's very basic. It's a very small car. There's just no comparison. So these electric cars are getting cheaper. Then you look at the Model 3 all-wheel drive, which to me is one of the best cars on the market. It's what I own. I love it to death. I love driving it, and I've had it for roughly 70,000 miles now, and it's been a wonderful car. That car comes out very low also. It's about middle of the pack on all these cars, so it's not as cheap as your cheapest cars. But it is cheaper than a lot of the other cars on here, such as the BMW 3 Series, the 5 Series. Heck, it's even cheaper than the BMW 2 Series when you actually compare it with the $7,500 taxes that you get off of it. So this car was designed to kind of compete with the 3 Series, and that's exactly what it's doing in the price range. You can see it's cheaper than, a lot of your other brands. And then, so the next table I want to show you is just like we did earlier, where I'm actually going to show it as they're kind of going up by price. And so you've got the cheapest car on the left, which is the Nissan Sentra, and you got the most expensive car, which is going to be your Lexus LS 500. And that car is, way up there around $80,000, much more expensive. But what you see here is that the Model 3 rear-wheel drive at $7,500 is, less than 25% the data set, basically. Just above the Nissan Altima 2.5 liter. So it's under the K5, it's under the Camry, it's under the Subaru Legacy, it's under the Subaru WRX and the Audi A3. And then when you actually look at the all-wheel drive long-range car, which to me is the best Tesla Model 3, with the $7,500 taken off, and now you're actually lower than a Nissan Maxima, lower than an Infiniti Q50, which are very nice cars, and directly compete with this Model 3. And then you add on again the lack of maintenance, the much cheaper fuel costs. For example, fuel cost, my Model 3 saved me, in comparison to something like a BMW 3 Series, $1,000 last year, and it saves me roughly $1,000 every single year on fuel, just by charging at home versus paying at gas stations. And so the whole point of this that I'm trying to make is that electric cars, for one, are getting more price competitive. These Model 3s, the all-wheel drive Tesla Model 3s, are the same price that I bought my Model 3, actually slightly cheaper, in 2019. And so what that means is all these other cars, and everybody knows this, after 2019 and COVID and everything, the auto market got really competitive, lack of supply, and prices rose. And those prices never dropped back down necessarily. They've dipped a little bit, but not a real big price drop. But the thing is Tesla's values, they went up, but they've brought them back down now. And so now these cars are still the same price they were, with everything else getting more expensive, which to me, when you value in the 5-year ownership period with the lack of maintenance, the fuel to cost, you're talking $1,000 a year, that's $5,000 right there. I mean, you're getting to where you are below the price of the Nissan Sentra with a Tesla Model 3 rear-wheel drive. So, these cars are not only price competitive, but if you drive your car for many years, it's going to end up being cheaper than anything else on the market, and they're going to have more performance. They're going to be more fun to drive, just because electric cars are more fun to drive. You're never going to have to deal with gas stations again. You won't have to deal with maintenance. There's very little maintenance at all on these cars, and you're going to save a lot of money. And once you get a car paid off, it's almost like nothing to own these things. And the only last point that I bring out on costs that I get a lot of questions about is going to be insurance. And insurance, when I bought my car, I didn't actually see a big difference. The only reason I saw an increase was because I went from one valued car to a much more expensive valued car, because I'd never owned a car in the $40,000 range before. Nowadays, it's more common for these cars to be that expensive. So I don't expect insurance companies to really have that much more. They're starting to get more used to electric vehicles and understand that they actually are more reliable. They actually have a higher reliability factor. For example, I think the average gasoline vehicle is somewhere around 250,000 miles is how long they will last. 200 to 250,000 miles. And electric vehicles, I know there's not as many of them on the road, but at this point, it's about 300,000 miles that electric vehicles are expected to last. That's a long time. That's more than 10 years of driving easily. So it's a lot of extra savings. And every year you're driving an electric vehicle over a gas vehicle, you are saving money because it's easier to maintain. So that's what this video is about. Let me know in the comments if you have any questions. And if you enjoyed the video, leave a like. If you are looking at getting a Tesla, there's a referral link down in the description. Use that and you'll get $1,000 off of your Tesla, at least at the moment. Once you click on it, it'll tell you exactly what kind of benefits they are. They do change. And I'll also get some credits. I can get some, Tesla t-shirts or whatever. By using that link, you order through that link. And when you place your order, you have to go through that link. And also, there's some other links down there for you to take a look at. And leave a comment and like the video. Subscribe so you'll see when I come up with new content. And we'll see you on the next one.